So it's been about 2 weeks, maybe 3, since I've had my hands on the Pixel 6 Pro, and I think it's finally time to give you guys my opinion on it. So let's kick things off with its specs. The Google Pixel 6 Pro is of course rocking Google's first ever SoC on a smartphone dubbed Tensor. It has 12 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of storage, up to 512 gigabytes, a triple camera setup, and a 6.7-inch OLED display. Now, the display itself features a variable 120Hz refresh rate, which is very similar to ProMotion on iPhone 13 Pro, which can basically go all the way down to 10Hz and go up to 120Hz, which will then result in better battery life in the long run. Now, unlike the regular Pixel 6, the 6 Pro also features a slight curve to its display, which I personally don't love. I'm a big fan of flat displays. It's just ergonomically way better to hold, but you will get thicker bezels in return, which I'm completely okay with. Now, I don't know about you guys, but after a few weeks of using the Pixel 6 Pro, I'm still not a fan of that curved edge. Now, one thing I do want to bring up real quick before we talk about its design are the vibration motors inside the Pixel 6 Pro. I was telling my buddy Joshua Vergara that the phone's vibration motors are so good that it feels like it's 4D. Every swipe, tap, or long press on the display just feels so good, so great job there, Google. Now, the overall design of the phone is pretty interesting. I kind of hated it at first, but then it grows on you. That black strip for the camera on the back looks really cool to me now, and honestly is just a nice change of pace from all the pill or squared off camera cutouts from other phones. It's nice to see something different here on the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro, and I really like the design. While I did have access to some of the other colors thanks to my friends Issa and Joshua, I did get the stormy black color from Google, which is the color I actually wanted because I love being able to customize my phones using dbrand. The fact that the sides are black, the bezels are black, I opted in for that Hey Mark L Halloween special using dbrand's sunrise orange skin for the body and added a matte black piece for the camera bar just to get it to look the way I wanted to. Obviously, you can choose different colors, use special edition skins and whatnot, so if you want to go ahead and customize your Pixel 6 or Pixel 6 Pro, just check out the first link down below or go to dbrand.com/heymarkl. Alright, now let's talk about Google Tensor. Like I said before, in almost every review video, I don't really like to get technical with benchmark scores or anything like that. I would rather tell you guys my own personal experience and what I think of the phone's performance. Now, Google's Tensor is supposed to be 80% faster than the Pixel 5, which was rocking a mid-range Snapdragon 765G processor, which was decent, but definitely not a flagship processor. But I think the question here that a lot of people, myself included, want to know is it better than Qualcomm's flagship 888 processor? So in my experience, the phone is buttery smooth. No matter what I threw at it, it worked like a true flagship phone. I didn't notice slowdowns or drop frames either, and switching between apps were all really smooth too. When it comes to gaming though, I was told to play some graphically intensive games like Genshin Impact, Call of Duty, or Asphalt 9, and while Asphalt 9 performed really well, Genshin Impact wasn't as smooth as I'd hoped. I think it's because it's not fully optimized for Google Tensor yet, so hopefully in a couple of months an update's going to get pushed out so that frames won't drop while you're playing for long periods of time and we can potentially get consistent 60 frames per second. But let's be real, the Pixel 6 Pro isn't a gaming phone, but I really want to see how much developers can really push Google Tensor and how much power we can get out of it. Now, before anyone comments about overheating, I haven't really had any issues with that, so I'm not sure what to tell you. The phone will get hot if I'm playing for a while, but that's normal, and that happens to almost every phone that I use. Now, in terms of battery life, the Pixel 6 Pro features a huge 5,003 mAh battery, which to be quite honest, lasts about a day, maybe a day and a half. Now, obviously this depends on what you do with your phone, but you can probably push it to 2 days if you're not gaming on it constantly or shooting photos. And I think with the variable refresh rate on the 6 Pro, it actually helps with battery life since it can go all the way down to 10 Hz if it's idle. But just like Tensor, we'll see if the battery life is going to be the same in a few months and whether it'll actually hold up to what I've gotten so far 3 weeks into using it. Alright, lastly, the cameras. The Pixel line has always been my favorite to shoot with on Android. I think the way that Google processes their images have always looked the best in my opinion. So the Pixel 6's new main camera sensor can actually capture 150% more light than last year's Pixel 5, which means you'll get better low light performance, better color science, better detail, and, well, more natural looking bokeh. Well, without getting too technical, outdoors during the day, you'll get really amazing shots out of the Pixel 6 Pro. It's easily at the top of my list when it comes to smartphone cameras. It's almost as good, if not better than the iPhone 13 Pro in my opinion. Shots out of the camera do look a little bit more contrasty than I'd like, but that might be due to Google's HDR processing. But for me, I personally like a more flatter looking image so I can edit the photos and post the way I want. But this isn't a deal breaker for me at all since it can shoot RAW, which will give the photos a flatter look with no post processing. But overall though, from a point and shoot standpoint, it's not super saturated unlike some other Android phones. And I also noticed that white balance is more accurate in different lighting conditions and it's pretty much lifelike. Now, there's definitely still that pixel look to each shot, which is contrasty, sharp, and maybe a little too harsh on HDR processing. I'll actually link to a Twitter thread that my buddy David Imel wrote about how the Pixel 6 processes its images and why Google needs to improve and change its post-processing to help this brand new sensor. It's a really fun and interesting read if you want to get more technical and see side-by-side shots. Alright, now the telephoto lens, which is my favorite lens to use on any smartphone, is pretty good, but I think the 4X may be a little too zoomed in for me. I think 2.5x or 3x telephoto is the perfect length for me, but the main issue with the telephoto lens, which also applies to the iPhone 13 Pro, is that it won't automatically switch to the actual telephoto lens in certain conditions. Instead, it'll just zoom the main camera sensor 4 times or however many times that telephoto lens is and use that, which results in really muddy, over-sharpened photos. Honestly, if there's a way to disable that, I'd probably be using the telephoto feature more. Now, the ultra-wide does look good in my opinion. I just don't really use ultra-wide all that often, but it's here and looks just as good as the ones on the OnePlus 9 Pro, S21 Ultra, and iPhone 13 Pro in my opinion. Colors don't seem to look too different from the main sensor, which is great because you'll have a consistent looking shot throughout the zoom range. Now, there's also a few software editing features exclusive on the 6 and 6 Pro, at least at the time of making this video, and those are Magic Eraser, Motion Mode, and Face and Blur. I think the best new feature and the one I'm going to focus on is Magic Eraser. It's basically content-aware fill in Photoshop, but built into your phone. So if you have people photobombing your photos or just have objects in the background that you don't want in your photos, you can magically erase them. It's actually really neat and in my opinion, a pretty big game changer, especially if you like editing on the go and have a super mobile setup. You don't need another app or a computer anymore at this point. Everything's literally on your phone in one single app. Now, is it perfect? No, but I'm sure as we keep using this feature, Google's AI and machine learning will make this feature better, but so far it's not bad. Now, video is something I never thought about until I used Apple's iPhone 13 Pro. I believe that cinematic mode just changed the game for shooting videos on your phone, and the Pixel 6 Pro, to my surprise, is actually a pretty solid contender. Granted, you don't have cinematic mode, but with that new main sensor, you'll get some pretty good natural looking bokeh when you're up close to your subject. The colors also look really good too, and the video doesn't look too saturated or too sharp in my opinion. Also, when you're shooting with the 4X sensor, the shots actually look really clear. It doesn't look over-processed and sharp, although the colors do look slightly different from the main sensor, but overall a pretty solid camera and a nice upgrade from the Pixel 5. So yeah, that's the Google Pixel 6 Pro in a nutshell. It's Google's best Pixel device yet. It packs a ton of really great stuff like a huge battery, beautiful 120Hz adaptive display, a nice set of cameras, and it starts at $899. While the 6 Pro is an amazing phone, I actually think that the regular Pixel 6 is what most people should look into. It's using the same Google Tensor chip as the 6 Pro, so performance is top notch, but you will get a smaller and flat display, which I'm a fan of. Now, you're also going to be losing a telephoto lens, which may not be a big deal to a lot of people, and probably the best part about this deal is that it starts at just $599, which is an insane value for a flagship phone in 2021. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on beautiful videos like this, and yeah, I'll see you all in the next one.